the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.
Damn, that shit was dope.
And welcome back to another Warrior Creed live stream with me, the Radical, Majid Nawaz. On your screens right about now should be the title screen for today's live stream. Breaking news, and that is that the medical inquest into the Midazolam-Death of the deceased Derek Dimmock is set to resume this August as the director of the Royal Trinity Hospice that Mr. Dimmock saw his last days in decided to quit. That's him right there. That man who is pictured was the director of the Royal Trinity Hospice. He decided to quit merely one day before the inquest began. Those of you who follow will remember we covered it extensively in March, just a month or so ago. One day before that inquest began, the director of the Royal Trinity Hospice quit. And there's more as this screen gives you the breaking news. We're just going to read it for you. Medical inquest into Midazolam-Death case rescheduled. The remainder of the medical inquest into the Midazolam-Death of Derek Dimmock, presided over by Senior Coroner Dr. Julian Morris, will resume at Southwark Coroner's Court in London from the 11th to the 15th of August 2025. Radical Media commits once more to send yours truly to cover the inquest on a daily basis with live readouts, as we did during the first 5 days of that inquest. But the second paragraph here, this comes after news broke that Sir Andrew Dillon, that's his name, Sir Andrew Dillon, pictured there. This comes after news broke that Sir Andrew Dillon, director at Royal Trinity Hospice, where Derek Dimmock died, resigned only one day after the medical the medical inquest into Mr. Dimmock began. This same Andrew Dillon had previously served as chief executive of NICE, the very body that formulated the national guideline NG 163 involving midazolam as an end-of-life protocol. So let's get this straight. You did read that correctly. You did hear it correctly. The guy that was chief executive of the body, NICE, that was responsible for devising the protocol, NG163, that is the end-of-life protocol that puts people on midazolam and morphine to help facilitate their deaths. The guy that was the chief executive of that body that rolled out the NG163 protocol during the COVID-era mandates went on to become director of the Royal Trinity Hospice, where Derek Dimmock, the test case for this potentially precedent-setting medical inquest into what went on with those midazolam deaths. He was a director at that hospital where Derek Dimmock died, and he quit as director one day after the inquest into the death of Derek Dimmock began. You don't have to be Inspector Cluedo nor Agatha Christie to be somewhat suspicious of the order of events here. And we'll bring you more details of that into this stream. But the March inquest, the first 5 days, many of you will remember it. We covered it extensively, and all the receipts for all of the everything we mentioned in today's stream, including all of the interviews, live interviews we did at that March inquest, and the days 1 to 5 live readouts, non-official transcripts. Of course, they're not really transcripts because we were typing live, attempting to listen and write and respond at the same time. But they are as close as you can get to official transcripts without the official transcripts. Of course, there may well be typos and other such inaccuracies in there, but we did our best. All of that will be published for you in one place tomorrow, as always, via the Radical Dispatch. But that March inquest at the time did garner national news attention, not least on GB News. Beverly Turner covered the Derek Dimmock Midazolam-Death medical inquest on GB News back then. And there you can see the date, March the 20th. And here it is. We're going to show you the national news that it attracted from the time.
Thank you. It is important that we keep talking about. Do you know, there's a fascinating coroner's case going on at the moment in Southwark in London, which nobody's talking about, which was the death of a gentleman called Derek Dimmock, who died in a care home, and his son Paul has asked for a coroner's report into the fact that he believes he was killed by midazolam, which was an end of life pathway that many old people in that first spike of deaths were put on in care homes and in hospices and in not hospices but in hospitals, and the findings of that will be extremely significant. But if it is found that this guy died because he was over liberally given an end-of-life care drug that he didn't need, then it opens the floodgates to lots of people saying, hang on, what happened to my mum? What happened to my dad? Because people were panicking in care homes. And I'm not saying that they were deliberately bumping off the elderly, but in the environment of panic.
And don't forget, the Secretary of State for Health, Matt Hancock, said he was putting a protective arm around our care homes, and it was a disaster.
And here he is on the front page of the Mirror, Matt Hancock, having been at the COVID inquiry yesterday. You know, he said, I'd do it all again over my dead body.
Now, in more uplifting news, here is the forecast for some of our top European.
Now, we're sure that Beverly Turner at GB News will be very interested to learn that this man, Sir Andrew Dillon, quit at the Royal Trinity Hospice. That's the very hospice that she just mentioned there in the clip that Derek Dimmock died at. And he quit only one day after the inquest into Derek Dimmock's death began. Beverly Turner should be, as a broadcaster, incredibly interested in that story. If I were at GB News, I'd be approaching Sir Andrew Dillon right now for an interview as to his role in devising the NG163 midazolam plus morphine end-of-life care protocol, and why he quit at the Royal Trinity Hospice a mere day after the inquest began. Now, the Dimmock family has been very upset at the length of time between the two legs of this inquest. The first 5 days, of course, occurring in March. The second 5 days set, as we've stated here, for the 11th to 15th of August. That means all of summer goes by. And of course, potentially they lose the momentum that this particular first 5 days created in media, such as that GB News clip you just saw. The Dimmock family have released the following statement. Maureen and Paul Dimmock are very disappointed at the length of time required to wait, nearly 5 months after the first week's evidence, to conclude this inquest regarding the death allegedly connected to the toxicity from overuse of midazolam. And that there is a photograph of Derek Dimmock. The Dimmock family have been upset for a while, including during those first 5 days in March, at the way in which they say that they were treated and the way in which the inquest unfolded. And by way of an example, we're going to read for you exactly what happened at the end of those 5 days. And this is something we posted, you can see there at the time. We'll just read it for you. It's noteworthy. Nurse Nancy was the only medical professional who was thanked by the Dimmock family in court. This is despite the fact that she was then the junior nurse who was on duty when the midazolam was first administered to Derek, and she delivered the first doses. As we said below, there is a sense by the Dimmock family that the most junior nurse, Nancy Griffin-Gouldy, is in danger of being scapegoated by her superiors, Doctors Amy Kingston, consultant, and Phoebe Wright. This Dr. Phoebe Wright, by the way, we're going to come to, because remember that name. There's more on her coming up in this stream as well. But continue reading. That nurse Nancy Griffin-Gouldy is in danger of being scapegoated by her superiors, Doctors Amy Kingston, who was the consultant on duty on that day, and Dr. Phoebe Wright, who, by the way, was the first doctor on the floor looking after Derek Dimmock, and the Trinity Hospice leadership, as the decision to place Derek Dimmock on an end-of-life pathway, which the Dimmock family say hastened his death via midazolam, without a formal clinical assessment. Note that. The decision to place Derek Dimmock on an end-of-life pathway, which the Dimmock family say hastened his death via midazolam, without a formal clinical assessment, as accepted by all witnesses during the first 5 days of that inquest, wasn't her, meaning nurse Nancy Griffin-Gouldy, the most junior medical practitioner on the in the witness stand. It wasn't Nurse Nancy's responsibility, but the doctor's responsibility. Doctors meaning Amy Kingston, the consultant on duty, and Dr. Phoebe Wright, as ultimately admitted to by Dr. Amy Kingston in cross-examination. The Dimmock family are demanding real accountability from then Health Secretary Matt Hancock down to the leadership at the Royal Trinity Hospice, not the scapegoating of the very kind and most junior nurse on duty during that day. To continue from that particular post, Inquest notes, this is the note that the barrister for the Dimmock family, KC, King's Counsel, James Bogle, read out in the inquest to the coroner. I have been asked by Maureen and Paul Dimmock to thank Nurse Griffin-Gouldy, and only Nurse Griffin-Gouldy, for the care that she gave, that she gave Dell, which is Derek Dimmock. So the Dimmock family have been upset. They're worried that the most junior staff member at Royal Trinity Hospice will be scapegoated for the failures of director Sir Andrew Dillon, who quit a day after the inquest began, consultant on duty on the day, Dr. Amy Kingston, and the doctor on the floor in charge of Derek Dimmock on the day, Dr. Phoebe Wright. More on her in a moment. So the Dimmock family is understandably concerned. They're concerned with how the first 5 days went, and they're concerned with this long delay between the first 5 days of the inquest and the concluding 5 days set now for the 11th of August. And this concern goes all the way back, if you remember, to when the 50 families first met in Parliament in 2023. We were there and covered the event back then. This is an image from Committee Room 5 in the UK House of Commons. Paul Dimmock there is in the light pale blue T-shirt on the left of that image with his mother, Maureen, there as well. That photograph is in the UK House of Commons Committee Room 5. It is representative of the 50 family members who went to Parliament to make this claim that they believe their loved ones were killed by the use of death row drug midazolam combined with the opioid morphine, and that hastened their deaths using COVID as cover, as directed by then Health Secretary Matt Hancock and his midazolam mastermind, Dr. Luke Evans, Conservative MP. More on Luke Evans in a moment as well. But in that hearing of those 50 families in Parliament, again, a reason why the Dimmock family is concerned is because there was no audio recording of that hearing made available officially by those who convened the meeting. As you can see here on this post, why was no official recording available of the 50 families towards justice meeting arranged by Andrew Bridgen MP on the 14th of June 2023, which exposed midazolam euthanasia protocol NG163? Mr. Bridgen requested the video, but not available. And this is despite the fact that an image taken on the day states quite clearly there, broadcasting. The video was meant to be working, and yet it disappeared. Again, those of you who've been following will know that Radical Media provided our own raw audio recording file of the events that day. Again, that will be republished for you all free tomorrow in the Radical Dispatch. So there is a recording of the event, but just not an official recording. It's a very poor quality recording made by our own audio equipment. Of course, we were expecting an official recording. So we made a recording merely as backup and didn't concern ourselves with quality. But what happened then, of course, as we've just mentioned, is that no official audio recording nor video was made available of that day. And all these reasons are why the Derek Dimmock family are very concerned. And concerned they have a right to be, because there are three major conflicts of interest that have emerged during those first 5 days of the medical inquest into the death of Derek Dimmock. And we're going to go through them one by one for you. On your screens now, there are a number of serious anomalies and potential conflicts of interest with the Royal Trinity Hospice where Derek Dimmock died. The first is what we led the title screen with. And again, it's this one. Director of the Royal Trinity Hospice where the Midazolam-Death case occurred, Sir Andrew Dillon, resigned only one day after the medical inquest began. That's him right there. So that's conflict of interest number one. And the reason we are suggesting a conflict of interest is because that same man who was director of Royal Trinity Hospice prior to this was chief executive of NICE, the very body that devised the NG163 protocol. Here he is, according to HSJ for Healthcare Leaders, Health Intelligence media platform, headlined Andrew Dillon to end his 20-year reign at NICE. Subheading, Sir Andrew Dillon will step down as the chief executive of the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence in March 2020, after more than 20 years in the role. Now you can see the date of that article, 22nd of August 2019. Now the important thing here to note is actually the date he stepped down. Look in the subheading again, second line. He's due to step. He was stepping down in March 2020 after more than 20 years in the role. That's a very interesting date because the first wave of excess death in COVID occurred in April 2020, and it's that first wave of excess death that Dr. Wilson Tsai's peer-reviewed statistical analysis demonstrates very, very convincingly and plausibly using statistical analysis that April 2020 wave of excess death that nobody disputes occurred could not have been caused by COVID, despite what the media and government told us. It could also not have been caused by COVID vaccines because they weren't rolled out yet. So what caused that huge wave of excess death in April 2020? We're going to prove to you in this stream, as we've done before, and as we'll publish tomorrow again, republish with all the receipts, it could only have been midazolam. The COVID cases do not correlate with the excess death in April 2020. It could not have been COVID. The cases do not correlate. We have mapped this, not us, but Dr. Wilson Tsai has mapped this using statistical analysis. The COVID cases do not match the excess death of 2020, and vaccines weren't yet rolled out. The only thing that correlates with the excess death in April 2020 was the use of midazolam, and it correlates to over 90% coefficiency. All of this we're going to demonstrate with the statistical analysis and receipts in this live stream. We'll republish it tomorrow. So if that's the case, it's very curious, isn't it, that Sir Andrew Dillon quit again only 1 month before that excess death. Look at that again. Second line in the subheading. He quit in March 2020. Curiously, only 1 month before that huge spike in excess death. What huge spike, you may ask? That huge spike right there. The green line is, you can see there, the use of COVID injections, and the red line is the excess death. They correlate almost perfectly in April 2020. And the man responsible for implementing or devising the NG163 protocol that rolled out that midazolam right there, that correlates to over 90% coefficiency with the excess death in 2020. That man responsible quit 1 month before that mass excess death occurred. And there he is. He quit as CEO of the body, NICE, that formulated NG163 in March 2020. He's got form, hasn't he? Because then he quit 1 day after the inquest into Derek Dimmock's death began as well. This man is perpetually on the run, and he deserves accountability. Beverly Turner should be very interested at GB News in Sir Andrew Dillon. And of course, Beverly Turner should perhaps be sent a clip of this segment so that it could pique her curiosity and recover this inquest in full when it resumes in August, this August on the 11th, as should Neil Oliver at GB News. And by the way, not just those two, as should everybody who calls themselves a journalist, a broadcaster, or has anything to do with media, a producer that produces the shows for these hosts. All of you should be doing your jobs. This that we've just revealed to you is more than just a tad suspicious. And if you call yourself a journalist, if you call yourself a producer, if you call yourself anyone that is concerned with the goings on during COVID in 2020 and that first wave of mass excess death in April 2020 that isn't disputed by anybody, Everybody recognizes there was excess death in April 2020. You should all be asking what caused it. We've just demonstrated to you, and we will with more receipts, stay tuned, that it could not have been COVID. Dr. Wilson Tsai's peer-reviewed statistical analysis demonstrates that COVID cases do not correlate with the excess death in 2020. It could not have been COVID. And of course, everybody will remember the vaccines were not yet rolled out in April 2020. So what caused that mass excess death in April 2020? Well, Sir Andrew Dillon clearly quit his job before you could ask him that as chief executive of NICE, the body that formulated the NG163 protocol that involved the use of midazolam, the death row drug midazolam, and opioid morphine to hasten people's deaths. That, of course, is conflict of interest number one. And of course, it doesn't stop there. That same Andrew Dillon, who quit 1 month before the April 2020 excess death from NICE, went on to join the Royal Trinity Hospice and then quit that too, as you can see on your screen. So Andrew Dillon, chief exec at NICE, NG163, stepped down in March 2020. He went on to be director at Royal Trinity Hospice, where Derek Dimmock died, the man who's subject of this Midazolam inquest. He went on to be director at Royal Trinity Hospice, and he stepped down in March again, March the 18th, 2025, only 1 day after the Royal Trinity Hospice patient Derek Dimmock coroner's inquest started regarding death by midazolam. And here is proof. This is from Companies House. Royal Trinity Hospice, Companies House entry. You can see there, it's very clear, resigned. That is the entry for the director, Sir Andrew Dillon. And it says in grey on the left column under role, where it says director, resigned. We will publish all of this tomorrow in the receipts with the Radical Dispatch. It is incredibly concerning what's happened here with Sir Andrew Dillon, knighted, of course, like all of them were, for their betrayal of this nation. Don't forget, they were all knighted as a reward for them compromising themselves and betraying this country. If you go through all of those who led the COVID mandate era, other than the Prime Minister, of course, was Prime Minister, he doesn't need to be knighted, but all of those that led this travesty, that led the nation during the most historically tyrannical period that the world has witnessed, where 70% of the planet was unnecessarily locked down, and where hundreds of thousands of patients' deaths were hastened using midazolam and morphine under the cover of COVID, which has now been verified by Parliament itself to only have had a infection fatality rate, IFR, similar to the flu at 0.096%. The men and women, but the men who led that era have all been knighted to reward them. And so Andrew Dillon is one of them. And here we state it again very clearly. If you call yourself a journalist, if you call yourself a producer, if you call yourself a broadcaster, if you have anything to do with media whatsoever, what we've just presented to you should surely pique your curiosity. But so do your jobs. Do your bloody jobs. It is that simple. Cover this story. What are you running away from? Can't you see Sir Andrew Dillon is running away from something? Does that not whet your appetites to want to cover this story? But the conflicts of interest get even more concerning. Here's the second conflict of interest for you should be on your screens about now. And that is Dr. Phoebe Wright. We did say we'd come back to that name. Dr. Phoebe Wright, who was on duty at Royal Trinity Hospice supervising Derek Dimmock's death, wrote an expert paper on deaths caused by opioids during end-of-life protocols. The Royal Trinity Hospice doctor on duty during Derek Dimmock's deaths, Dr. Phoebe Wright, had already written a paper on the dangers of prescribing opioids for end-of-life purposes using the infamous case of the Gosport War Memorial Hospital, where multiple criminal charges have been brought against hospital staff over the unlawful killing of 450 patients. Now, that is something which you should all consider. The doctor on duty on the floor where Derek Dimmock died at Royal Trinity Hospice was well aware of the dangers of the overprescription of opioids as an end-of-life protocol because she wrote a research paper on it prior to taking on the role at the Royal Trinity Hospice. She wrote a research paper on perhaps the most infamous example of end-of-life protocols going wrong, and that is the example at the Gosport War Memorial Hospital, where multiple criminal investigations have been opened into what happened. And that demonstrates that the doctor on duty during the period of Derek Dimmock's death perhaps had foreknowledge of the protocols that they used that led to the death of Derek Dimmock. Certainly, Dr. Phoebe Wright cannot claim ignorance into the dangers of the overprescription of opioids and how they lead to deaths, and in particular, cannot claim ignorance of the so-called quote-unquote faulty syringe drivers that they attempted to blame for these deaths, because the very same faulty syringe drivers excuse was used at Gosport War Memorial Hospital. And despite that excuse being used, multiple criminal investigations have now been opened into the 450 deaths that occurred in Gosport War Memorial Hospital. Dr. Phoebe Wright wrote this paper into that scandal. You can see her name right there, Phoebe Wright, 90, retrospective audit of the prescription of opioids at the end of life in a hospice and hospital setting in the wake of the Gosport inquiry. Dr. Phoebe Wright has no excuse for the death of Derek Dimmock because she was fully aware of the 450 or more criminal deaths that occurred in Gosport Hospital, also using an opioid for end of life. So what was Dr. Phoebe Wright thinking during that period when the same happened, or very similar happened, death with an opioid plus midazolam to Derek Dimmock at Royal Trinity Hospice? This is a major conflict of interest. It is certainly newsworthy. Derek died using those same end-of-life protocols involving opioids. Dr. Phoebe Wright knew full well about this and was a witness, is a witness in the Derek Dimmock inquest. Media, do your jobs. Beverly Turner, Neil Oliver, watch this stream. We know you do. You've told us you do. Read the receipts tomorrow. Speak to your producers. There is no escaping this story. We are not going away. Have a look at this. This is an email, we're not going to read the whole thing for you, that we sent Dr. Phoebe Wright prior to the inquest beginning. We're going to read the second, second, third, and fourth paragraphs only for you, beginning with recently. Recently, we at Radical Media have been investigating the use of midazolam by the NHS as an end-of-life care pathway. In this light, we interviewed Dr. Wilson Tsai on his peer-reviewed paper about the statistical correlation between the UK's excess death during the COVID period and the administering of midazolam in our care facilities. Dr. Tsai's paper and his conclusions have alarmed us. We have been looking for ways to corroborate what Dr. Tsai is alleging, and over the course of our research, we came across your paper, Dr. Phoebe Wright, outlining failings of a similar nature in end-of-life protocols in March 2020, called Retrospective Audit of the Prescription of Opioids at the End of Life in a Hospice and Hospital Setting in the Wake of the Gosport Inquiry. Next paragraph. Your paper and insights have piqued our curiosity, and we would be keen to speak with you, initially on background, about your assessment of the Gosport failings and how they might compare to Dr. Wilson Tsai's findings. That email we sent to Dr. Phoebe Wright, who is keep in mind, is a serving witness in the medical inquest into the death of Derek Dimmock, was the doctor on duty on the floor during Derek Dimmock's death, and therefore was the doctor responsible for the administration of midazolam into Derek Dimmock's system, administered by the junior nurse Nancy Griffin-Goldie. When we sent that email to Dr. Phoebe Wright's work account, this is a professional inquiry. That's why it was sent to Dr. Phoebe Wright's work account. We don't pester people in their personal lives, nor do we pester people at their homes. This was an email sent to Dr. Phoebe Wright's official work email address because it's a professional work inquiry involving her professional duties. This is the reply that we received prior to the inquest beginning from the witness in the inquest, Dr. Phoebe Wright. Hello. I really don't appreciate being contacted on my work email address and also calling the extremely busy reception team. Please, can you remove me from your mailing list and stop emailing me? Beverly Turner at GB News, Neil Oliver, and all of you in the media, producers, broadcasters, journalists, does that not pique your curiosity? What were we expected to do? The fact that Dr. Phoebe Wright wrote a research paper into the infamous 450 deaths that are now subject to a criminal inquiry at the Gosport War Memorial Hospital using opioids as an end-of-life care pathway is surely relevant to the fact that she knew what was happening at the Royal Trinity Hospice, where she supervised the death as a doctor on duty of Derek Dimmoth, and was the doctor on duty when midazolam and opioids were first administered to Derek Dimmoth. All we did was write an email to her professional work address inquiring about her professional duties as a doctor, and that was the reply that we got. I don't appreciate being contacted on my work email address. What would you like us to do, Dr. Phoebe Wright? Contact you on your personal email address? Was this not a professional inquiry made about you and how you conduct your professional duties? Media, journalists, broadcasters, Neil Oliver, Beverly Turner, do your jobs. We are literally feeding this story to you all. These sorts of receipts you don't even get in the most obvious national breaking news stories. Everything here is laid out on a platter for everybody to jump on. This is the story of what happened at Gosport War Memorial Hospital. You can see there, Sky News has already reported it. Gosport War Memorial Hospital staff to be interviewed under caution over hundreds of deaths. More than 450 elderly patients died at the Hampshire site between 1987 and 2001 after being given powerful painkillers. So if Dr. Phoebe Wright knew about that because she wrote her own research paper in March 2020 on that topic, here it is. There it is for you. You can all see it there. Then she has no excuse for what happened to Derek Dimmoth at the Royal Trinity Hospice, where she was the doctor on duty. Again, you can see it here from the local news in Portsmouth, 12th of June, 2022. Gosport War Memorial Hospital criminal investigation probes 700 patient records, 250 more than before. Detectives investigating deaths at Gosport War Memorial Hospital who had their lives shortened are now examining 700 patient records. Dr. Phoebe Wright knew all about that. She wrote the research paper on it shortly before starting at Royal Trinity Hospice, where the guy that devised the NG163 protocol using midazolam and morphine, Sir Andrew Dillon, where he'd just come from Nice, where they devised those protocols and landed as director at the Royal Trinity Hospice, where Dr. Phoebe Wright also landed after writing that research paper. I mean, you couldn't make this up. This case is literally handed to you on a platter. Again, Beverly Turner, Neil Oliver, GB News, all of you. Broadcasters, producers, journalists, not just GB News, it's not fair. Talk, BBC, Guardian, Independent, The Times, editor of The Times directly. Do your jobs. This is a scandal. It is perhaps the worst medical death scandal in history. It is a major, major story. COVID was used as cover. You all know by now. They whacked COVID on the birth certificates arbitrarily because people weren't dying of COVID. COVID had an IFR, infection fatality rate, of 0.096%, very similar to the flu. Curiously, there were no flu deaths that year. We've published all these receipts. We're going to publish them all again tomorrow. So what killed those people in that mass wave of excess death in April 2020 using NG163? It could not have been COVID. The cases do not correlate. COVID cases do not correlate with that excess death in April 2020. It could not have been vaccines. Vaccines were not rolled out. For those of you who've been following this story, forgive the repetition. We are exasperated The reason we're spelling it out so plainly is because the bloody media aren't doing their jobs. Again, Beverly Turner, Neil Oliver, GB News, Talk, BBC, Times, Independent, Guardian, all of you, do your jobs. We are laying this out on a platter for you. This is the second conflict of interest, the first being Andrew Dillon, the second being Dr. Phoebe Wright. We're now going to bring you the third conflict of interest. It gets even worse. The barrister defending the Royal Trinity Hospice in these first 5 days of the inquest is none other than this person. Take a hard look at that photograph. The barrister, Amanda Kluger Wright, the lady in this photograph, who's defending the Royal Trinity Hospice where Derek Dimmoth's death occurred using midazolam and an opioid. This same barrister was a Tory councillor during the COVID mandate period, led by her Prime Minister Boris Johnson and her Health Secretary Matt Hancock. Here she is in photographs campaigning with Boris Johnson and former Health Secretary Sajid Javid. That is the barrister, Tory councillor during the COVID mandate area. In other words, served in the government that rolled out these disastrous COVID mandates, now defending Royal Trinity Hospice in this medical inquest. Is that not curious for you, journalists? Is that not curious for you, broadcasters, producers? Is that not curious for you, GB News? Beverly, Neil, look at this story and take it on board as a major historical scandal, the scale and the likes of which this country has never seen. This barrister, Amanda Kluger Wright, as Google results show you here on your screen, Conservative win. Amanda Victoria Wright, which was her previous name, was elected with a majority of 7%. A total of 4,057 votes were cast. That is in the Leicestershire district of Burbage. And here, that same Amanda Kluger Wright, you can see campaigning with none other than Dr. Luke Evans MP. Now, we said you remember that name. Dr. Luke Evans MP is the same Conservative MP who ensured that Matt Hancock, as Health Secretary, ordered such a large supply of midazolam from France that the French ran out of midazolam. You heard that correctly. The barrister representing Royal Trinity Hospice, a former Tory councillor who served in the Conservative government that implemented these COVID mandates. She's now the barrister representing the hospice where Derek Dimmoth died, campaigned with midazolam mastermind, the Member of Parliament for the Conservatives, Dr. Luke Evans. He's the same guy that held Matt Hancock to account in an official parliamentary hearing to make sure that he pre-ordered so much midazolam that the French ran out of their supplies. We're going to show you that video. But here she is, campaigning with him again on the election circuit in Burberry. You can see there, Burberry in the background, Methodist Church. That is the district that she eventually stood for in Leicestershire. And here she is on her own Facebook page, campaigning with MP Luke Evans today in Burbage. Lots of great feedback. Who is Luke Evans? This is the same Dr. Luke Evans MP who, during COVID, held Matt Hancock to his word in a parliamentary inquiry, ensuring that he had pre-ordered such a surplus of midazolam that French supplies ran out, and all before the COVID interventions were implemented. Yes, you read that sentence correctly. We're going to read it again for you. This is the same Dr. Luke Evans MP who, during COVID, held Matt Hancock to his word in a parliamentary inquiry, ensuring that he had pre-ordered such a surplus of midazolam that French supplies ran out, and all before the COVID interventions were implemented. That's the Luke Evans MP that the barrister defending the Royal Trinity Hospice campaigned for right there. No wonder the Royal Trinity Hospice has called her in to defend them. This case has so many conflicts of interest that you don't have to be a journalist to look at this and understand it's a huge story. Here is Luke Evans in Parliament, in an official parliamentary hearing, making sure that then Health Secretary Matt Hancock had such a huge supply of midazolam in advance that the French supply ran out because the UK ordered so much of the stuff. Have a look at this.
With that, I mean,
That guy that you just saw there is Dr. Luke Evans, Conservative MP, and you're going to see him asking Matt Hancock about the fact they've got enough midazolam.
With that, I mean, a good death needs three things. It needs equipment, it needs medication, and it needs the staff to administer it. So in terms of equipment, a few quick questions. Do you have enough syringe drivers in the NHS to deliver medications to keep people comfortable when they're passing away?
Yes, we do. There was a challenge raised about this about 8 days ago, and we resolved. Actually, it wasn't as big a challenge as was made public, and we've resolved that. So yes, right now we do.
And the second one is with that's the syringe drivers deliver medication, particularly things like midazolam and morphine. Do you have any precautions put in place to make sure we have enough of those medications to be delivered?
Yes. We've got a big project to make sure that those sorts of medications, as well as the ITU medications that I spoke about earlier, that the supply chains, global supply chains for those medicines are clear. They are, in fact, those medicines are made in a relatively small number of factories around the world. So it is a delicate supply chain, and we are in contact with the whole supply chain.
And in line with that, morphine is currently prescribed per patient. The reason to do that is stop it being abused. So I have to prescribe it for Mr. Hancock. However, in this situation, if you're going into a healthcare home, you may not want to waste precious things like morphine. Have you considered relaxing the laws around morphine prescribing for doctors and healthcare professionals so that there isn't waste?
That's something that we keep under review. I've looked at that particular point to reduce wastage of key medicines, and it's something that the supply team, in the department and the clinical team talk about all the time. I don't know if that's JVT's part of the clinical team, and he may want to say more.
Thank you. I've nothing really to add on that.
Okay.
That was an official parliamentary hearing looking into whether or not they had sufficient midazolam and morphine pre-ordered so that what happened in April 2020 with that mass wave of excess death could happen. That was Dr. Luke Evans, MP, questioning then Health Secretary Matt Hancock as to whether they had enough pre-ordered midazolam and whether they had relaxed the rules around the use of opioids so that they could administer more and not have to approve each individual single dose. You heard that right there. This inquiry can be found at this record in the House of Commons. It was conducted online only because, keep in mind, we were all locked down at the time, but we will republish all these receipts for you tomorrow. And as you can see, this story is literally being handed to people for free on a platter. We're not interested in exclusives here, GB News. We're not interested, Talk, The Guardian, The Times. We're not interested in owning this story. We're interested in this story being heard. The Dimmock family and the 50 families who went to Parliament and all the others who lost their loved ones during that horrible COVID tyranny deserve justice. But also, our future generations in this country and beyond deserve to know the truth as to what happened so that this can never, ever be allowed to happen again. And it's the truth that is being concealed. And it's very curious, talking of conflicts of interest, that we're on the third one now, and that is the fact that that same Dr. Luke Evans you just heard, the barrister defending the Royal Trinity Hospice, was campaigning for him and was a serving member of his government at the time these COVID mandates were implemented. Well, if you search online for those receipts now, this is what comes up. Look at this. Look at that. Election results for Burbage. What does it say then? No election candidates have been specified for this area. That's the time it happened in. That's 6th of May 2020. It's not even online anymore. But the internet never forgets. Here are those results for Burbage. Look at that. There's the notice of election agents' names and offices for Leicestershire County Council. And right there at the bottom, in the third row, bottom right, the very bottom right, yeah, where it says name of candidates, right at the bottom, on the bottom right, you'll see Amanda Kluger Wright's name. That is the barrister now defending the Royal Trinity Hospice, where Derek Dimmock died, in the ongoing medical inquest. That same barrister served in the COVID-era government, that implemented all these COVID mandates, campaigned for the COVID Midazolam mastermind, Dr. Luke Evans, MP, who ensured Matt Hancock had pre-ordered such a sufficient supply of Midazolam that the French ran out of their own supply of the drug. And Google results initially do return a result that indicate Amanda Kluger-Wright won in that election. And we're just going to see if we can find that again for you so that you can see it on your screens. There it is. Election results for Burbage, 6th of May, 2020. Remember that date? That's the date we just showed you there, where it now shows 6th of May, 2021. No election candidates have been specified for this area. Well, if you do a search without actually going into the link, this is what comes up. Conservative win, Amanda Victoria Wright, which was her previous name, with a majority of 7%. But if you click that link, the one that we're just showing you now on your screens, if you click that link to actually read the story, it's been removed from the internet and this page comes up instead. And you're telling me that's not suspicious. But due to diligent researchers, we have what used to probably show up. And that's on your screens. It's the bottom right. Amanda Kluger-Wright's name is clearly in there. And of course, we have all the photos of her campaigning for the party that implemented the COVID mandates. There she is with the Prime Minister. There she is with the Health Secretary. There she is with Dr. Luke Evans. It's not hidden. And there she is on our own Facebook page saying that she was campaigning with Luke Evans. So these three conflicts of interest, the quitting of Director of Royal Trinity Hospice, Sir Andrew Dillon, who previously served as Chief Executive of NICE that rolled out the NG163 protocols. He quit only one day after the medical inquest began. That's conflict of interest number one. Conflict of interest number two, the doctor on the floor on duty responsible for the administration of Derek Dimmock's, into Derek Dimmock of midazolam and morphine. That doctor, Dr. Phoebe Wright, knew full well of the dangers of over-administering opioids during end of life because she wrote a paper on the now subject to over 400 criminal investigations at Gosport War Memorial Hospital. She had foreknowledge, and yet still this happened under her supervision at the Royal Trinity Hospice. Conflict of interest number three, the barrister defending the Royal Trinity Hospice served in the government that implemented these COVID mandates, campaigned for the guy that made sure that this government had enough midazolam to do this in April 2020. And it's all very curious. Now, April 2020, you can see, is a very significant date. A month before April 2020, Sir Andrew Dillon quit as Chief Executive of NICE. It's a very significant date. And now we're just going to conclude today by demonstrating for you all that mass wave, the first mass wave of excess death in this country that was used by the government and the media to scare us all about COVID, could not have been caused by COVID. And we're going back to demonstrate this to Dr. Wilson Tsai's peer-reviewed statistical analysis. The first slide to note is this one. The April 2020 UK excess death could not have been due to COVID. It could not have been due to COVID because the official line from the UK government's own health security agency states, as of March 2020, quote, COVID-19 is no longer considered to be a high consequence infectious disease. There is the archive from the webarchive.org of the UK Health Security Agency's entry from that date. We're going to publish all these receipts for you tomorrow. Look at that on your screens. Status of COVID-19. As of 19th of March 2020, COVID-19 is no longer considered to be a high consequence infectious disease in the UK. So if COVID is no longer a high consequence, what does consequence mean? If COVID is no longer a high consequence infectious disease, then how a month later did we see the consequence of a huge wave of excess death that was supposedly due to COVID, the largest wave of excess death this country had seen to that point, used to bump us all into lockdown and to force us all into taking these so-called vaccines? If COVID was already declared by the UK Health Security Agency as no longer a high consequence infectious disease, what killed all those people a month later? Again, it could not have been COVID. Because look at this graph. Again, we'll publish all these receipts tomorrow. This is from Dr. Wilson Tsai's peer-reviewed statistical analysis. You can see there, they do not correlate. COVID cases, UK monthly new COVID cases and new COVID deaths. You can see the deaths are in red. The COVID cases are in green. They do not correlate. The deaths in red, look at that huge 2 spikes in red occurred before the 2 green spikes of COVID cases. They do not correlate. It could not have been COVID that killed all those people in April 2020. So what killed them? Forgive us for the repetition. We're trying to drill this home because nobody seems to be doing their jobs. And as you can imagine, for the Derek Dimmock family, it's very frustrating. For Paul and Maureen and for the 50 families that went to Parliament making this claim, and for all those who lost their loved ones, you can see them there in Parliament. They are yet to receive justice. It's very frustrating for them because the facts are so obvious. It could not have been COVID that caused those deaths. Perhaps some of you may argue it was vaccines. Well, again, it could not have been vaccines because this graph demonstrates, look at that. That first wave of death is the first blue wave. The flu vaccine was then on the, you can see there, 26th and 9th, 2020. But that first blue wave occurred before the COVID vaccine, which was on 8th of December, 2020. It's all marked there on the graph for you. Perhaps later on it was vaccines, of course. We know the problems with these so-called vaccines, with the heart attacks, the strokes, pretty much destroying our immune system, exacerbating our pre-existing conditions and leading to mass death. That's something we've covered extensively. It's something that I personally lost my job for boycotting on Global's LBC, boycotting the booster shots onwards. They sacked me over Twitter without warning with 3 months left on my contract. We have every sympathy for those who are focusing on vaccines. But the point we are making here is that the first wave of excess death in April 2020 could not have been vaccines because, as this graph demonstrates, they were not yet rolled out. That first wave in blue there occurred before the vaccines were rolled out. So what caused those deaths? It could not have been COVID. We've already just shown you the COVID deaths do not correlate with that first wave. The red line is the deaths. The green line is the COVID cases. They do not correlate. What caused those deaths? The only thing that correlates with the April 2020 mass death was the use of midazolam, and it correlates to such an extent that it's a coefficient of over 90%. And when you see this visually, optically, it all begins to make sense. Look again. That is what caused the mass death in April 2020. It's the only thing that correlates. The red line is deaths. The green line is the administration of end-of-life death row drug midazolam with an opioid using NG163 or its equivalent end-of-life protocols across the country. It's all laid out on a plate. It's all laid out for anyone in media to jump on this story. It is the greatest scandal in our history. It is the greatest scandal in our history. It is the greatest scandal in our history. Do your jobs. This is laid out on a plate for you. A child could see what's happened here with the evidence we're presenting. And those graphs and those statistics, go read for yourselves. This is Dr. Wilson-Tsai's paper. Excess deaths in the United Kingdom, midazolam and euthanasia in the COVID-19 pandemic, published January 2024. It's online for you all to see, and we're going to read just a couple of quotes for you from that to make it very clear for you. This is directly from Dr. Wilson-Tsai's paper. This paper shows that the UK spike in deaths, wrongly attributed to COVID-19 in April 2020, was not due to SARS-CoV-2 virus, which was largely absent, but was due to the widespread use of midazolam injections, which were statistically very highly correlated, coefficient over 90%, with excess deaths in all regions of England during 2020. Contemplate that. See, this being statistical analysis is incredibly powerful because all Dr. Wilson, for those of you that perhaps aren't understanding what this means, what does statistical analysis mean? He's literally taken the data of every single death, compared it with the data of every single declared COVID case, says they did not match in April 2020. Then he's taken the data of every single example of the use of midazolam, compared it to the data of all the deaths in April 2020, and says they are matched to over 90%, and to a point where that's the graph. That's the beauty of statistical analysis. Unless you disbelieve in mathematics, it's impossible to argue against. Does anyone want to say they disbelieve in mathematics? That they'd rather believe Matt Hancock, the criminal, Dr. Luke Evans, MP, the criminal, even Amanda Kluger-Wright, the barrister defending Royal Trinity Hospice, who was in that criminal government when all of this was done? Or do you want to believe the mathematics behind this, the statistical analysis, which, by the way, is peer-reviewed? Why won't your editors let you cover this story? Why will your news organizations and the owners of your media platforms not let you cover this story? What are they hiding? Are they running away like Sir Andrew Dillon, who ran away from NICE that formulated the NG-163 Midazolam protocol only a month before this ex-death that we've shown you was represented? Remember, he quit NICE 1 month before this happened. That's on your screens. And then he quit at the Royal Trinity Hospice only 1 day after the inquest began. Are the owners of your media channels running away like Sir Andrew Dillon? We're going to read the second paragraph from Dr. Wilson-Tsai's statistical analysis now. Bottom of your screens. Importantly, excess deaths remained elevated following mass vaccination in 2021, but were statistically uncorrelated to COVID injections, while remaining significantly correlated to midazolam injections. The widespread and persistent use of midazolam in UK suggests a possible policy of systemic euthanasia. The widespread and persistent use of midazolam in UK suggests a possible policy of systemic euthanasia. Now, all that remains for the last 5 days that are coming up on the 11th of August, delayed justice nonetheless, perhaps justice still will be served, for the Derek Dimmock family, is to see that the media institutions in this country do still believe in this country. They do still believe in doing their jobs. They do still believe in inquiry and free media and holding authority and power to account. We are asking you all to do your jobs. Patience is running thin. There are more than just the 50 families that went to Parliament. Remember, the video for which has mysteriously gone missing. There are more than the 50 families who went to Parliament demanding justice. There are hundreds of thousands of elderly across the country. Their families are now beginning to understand what happened. Remember, even a child could understand what we've just presented. So imagine you're one of these families and you understand what's happened. You've watched streams like this. You've seen Dr. Wilson-Tsai's research. You've heard from those 50 families. You know what happened to your elderly. And then you look to your news organizations and they are still pretending that none of this happened. They're still pretending that this was due to COVID, or they're still pretending that this was just an accident due to panic. Matt Hancock and Luke Evans organized this with forethought. They did it in advance. They pre-ordered the midazolam supplies. Yes, the nurse on the grassroots didn't understand what they were doing because they were following the NG-163 protocol. But why did the chief executive of NICE quit 1 day before that mass excess death in April? 1 month before that mass excess death in April 2020. Why did Sir Andrew Dillon then re-quit from the Royal Trinity Hospice only 1 day after the inquest began? What are they hiding? Do your jobs. We're going to conclude again with that video of Dr. Luke Evans, MP, for the Conservative government, ensuring that Matt Hancock pre-ordered enough midazolam so that the French ran out of supplies. And remember, the barrister defending Royal Trinity Hospice campaigned for this guy in the same council elections that she ended up, according to Google results, winning, serving in the government that implemented this horrific death protocol.
With that, I mean, a good death needs three things. It needs equipment, it needs medication, and it needs the staff to administer it. So in terms of equipment, a few quick questions. Do you have enough syringe drivers in the NHS to deliver medications to keep people comfortable when they're passing away?
Yes, we do. There was a challenge raised about this about 8 days ago, and we resolved it. Actually, it wasn't as big a challenge as was made public, and we've resolved that. So yes, right now we do.
And the second one is with that's the syringe drive. deliver medication, particularly things like midazolam and morphine. Do you have any precautions put in place to make sure we have enough of those medications to be delivered?
Yes. We've got a big project to make sure that those sorts of medications, as well as the ITU medications that I spoke about earlier, that the supply chains, the global supply chains for those medicines are clear. They are, in fact, those medicines are made in a relatively small number of factories around the world. So it is a delicate supply chain, and we are in contact with the whole supply chain.
And in line with that, morphine is currently prescribed per patient. The reason to do that is stop it being abused. So I have to prescribe it for Mr. Hancock. However, in this situation, if you're going into a healthcare home, you may not want to waste precious things like morphine. Have you considered relaxing the laws around morphine prescribing for doctors and healthcare professionals so that there isn't waste?
That's something that we keep under review. I've looked at that particular point to reduce wastage of key medicines, and it's something that the supply team, in the department and the clinical team talk about all the time. I don't know if that's JVT's part of the clinical team, and he may want to say more.
Thank you. I've nothing really to add on that.
Okay.
If I were Reform UK, led by Nigel Farage, I would understand that this Midazolam case, Zia Yusuf, chairman of Reform, I would understand if I were you, that this Midazolam case ensures that the greatest threat to your electoral success, not Labour, the Conservatives, because your voters are floating voters between you and the Tory party. So your greatest threat is making sure the Conservatives do not resurge and steal those votes that you're hoping to gain to defeat Labour. This entire scandal was implemented under the Conservatives. Boris Johnson, Matt Hancock, Dr. Luke Evans, all of those, Amanda Kluger-Wright, the barrister now defending Royal Trinity Hospice, all of those served in the government, either as leaders or in junior positions, that implemented this Midazolam-Death protocol that led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands, perhaps, of elderly in this country. Zia Yusuf, Nigel Farage, Reform UK. This is an open goal for you. It ensures that the Conservatives are rightly held accountable and take responsibility for the greatest scandal in history. This ensures that you cut through in between the Labour government under Keir Starmer that wanted more mandates, not fewer mandates in response to COVID, and the Conservatives who implemented these mandates. It's an open goal for Reform UK. Nigel, Zia, again, this is to you. Take this on board. The story's on a platter for you. It's an open goal. And deliver justice to all those families who know what happened to their elderly and went to Parliament to make that complaint and yet have been ignored. The video of that parliamentary meeting has gone missing. And despite that, we continue to present all the receipts for you because the evidence is undeniable. Zia, I know that you're a techie. Don't deny math. Dr. Wilson-Sai's peer-reviewed statistical analysis is there for you. It demonstrates using mathematics that the only thing that correlated with the April 2020 excess death is midazolam injections. Correlation does not mean causation. That is true. But if you eliminate every other possible cause, COVID cases, vaccines, then what remains is only the correlation between midazolam deaths and excess death in April 2020. That's the only thing left, and therefore the only thing that could have caused it. It's very simple. Do not deny maths. Follow the evidence. So Reform, I conclude this stream with this message to you. Do your jobs. All of you. Do your bloody jobs, because patience is running thin. That's all for this week's Warrior Creed live stream. You're listening to The Radical. Majid Nawaz. As always, the receipts for the stream in detail will be presented with all the hyperlinks for all of you to look up for yourselves in tomorrow's Radical Dispatch. We thank our premium members for their support. Their premium membership, your premium membership, gains you access to the audio and video of this live stream, in addition to the behind the paywall content on the Radical Dispatch. Without your support, we cannot do what we do. So we encourage you all to become paid premium members on the Radical Dispatch via magicnoirs.substack.com. Thank you all, and until next time.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge. Witness the strength. Street knowledge. Street knowledge.
Terrorize the jam like troops in Pakistan.
Street knowledge. Street knowledge. Quick service announcement brought to you in part by Warriors.